This is the exact step-by-step process that a doctor or psychologist will use to diagnose you if you have ADHD. Hi, I'm Dr. LeGrand, and I have ADHD and dyslexia. When I was first getting diagnosed with ADHD, it wasn't until I was in college because, as a kid, I knew I had ADHD, but when I got to college, I was failing my exams, failing classes, and the symptoms just got worse and worse. So I went in and got an assessment, and man, was there a lot of questionnaires, testing to really kind of diagnose me with ADHD. It was quite a grueling process, but I can understand the whole process with it. So let me kind of break down the importance when it comes to why it's so important to do these assessments and how they actually, each doctor will go through each one of these steps, but not every doctor goes through this process. And it's really important that you understand how the process works so that when you go and get assessed for ADHD, that they're actually doing their due diligence and doing this whole process. So let's dive into that. So the first step is that when you go in and seeing a doctor, pediatrician, psychologist who's going to diagnose with you with ADHD, is they'll ask you questions about your symptoms that you're experiencing. Now, depending on, if you're going in for your child or if this is you as an adult, it really depends on the symptoms because they do vary differently from adults to also with kids. But more importantly, this has to be something that has been happening for at least 6 months or more. Otherwise, they'll have you wait because in order for really diagnosed with ADHD, they have to have it be an issue where it's been 6 months or more. And also for adults, it has to be something that's also been a problem as a child as well. And they'll ask you those questions if you've had these same symptoms as a child. Now, the second step is what they'll do is they'll administer ADHD test questionnaires. So these questionnaires can be a series of different questions asking how often do you get distracted? Do you tend to miss your appointments? Are you always late? Do you tend to also fidget a lot? So there's a lot of different questions, and they'll ask how often that is. And if it's not that often, so they have kind of a scale system, and they'll have you fill out those questionnaires and other different questionnaires. So there's a lot of different questions you have to go through and different tests, but also they'll even test your attention span as well. And I remember this, maybe it's been different since last time I did it when I was in college, but usually they would test your attention span by using different kind of computer software. And I, I definitely bombed it. And I knew by just even doing the test, going through it, I definitely had ADHD and going through that process. Now, the third step is what they should be doing is they will ask a close one or a loved one, a family member, to also ask them questions. So that way you have full perspective of different points of view and not just your own point of view. With that, they can actually relate and he's had these kind of issues. He's had these different symptoms. They might even have them fill out the same kind of questionnaires or different kind of questionnaires. And then of course, for kids, they'll even probably have school teachers maybe involved. But as far as adults, it's usually gonna be you and maybe your spouse or a close, friend or family member that they'll ask those questions and doing those questionnaires. Now, step 4, if they do it right and they do their due diligence, they should be doing a full examination on you. Not just the ADHD test, but also a full examination and blood work to rule out any other possibilities that could be similar to ADHD. So there's other diagnoses that can present with having similar symptoms with ADHD. And if they do a full examination to be able to kind of rule that out, because people get misdiagnosed all the time with ADHD, and that's a problem. And because of that, they really should be doing lots of different types of blood work. They should be doing other kind of exams, and the possibility it might be, a learning disability, but not necessarily ADHD, or it could be anxiety or depression. It could be a lot of different things. And misdiagnosis of ADHD happens all the time. And if it's not done right, and you have that diagnosis for your life, it could be some major problems there. Now, the system is not perfect, because it's really hard to diagnose someone with ADHD. It's not the same as diagnosing someone with diabetes, because it's not like we can just run a blood work and, oh yeah, you have ADHD, or do a scan on you and okay, you have ADHD. So the system definitely has flaws of trying to diagnose somebody with ADHD. In fact, there was a study that was done where they actually looked at 50 different clinics, pediatrician clinics, and they found that
half of the people did not follow the ADHD protocol for diagnosing someone.
Okay. Half. Just let that sink in for a moment. And on top of that, 93% of them still administered ADHD medications. So that's kind of scary, because this is where misdiagnosis happens all the time within clinics. It's not a perfect system. And I encourage you to get a second opinion. But even on top of that, there was another study that they found that 900,000 kids that were diagnosed with ADHD out of the 4.5 million kids that were diagnosed with ADHD in the US was also misdiagnosed with ADHD, that had the possibility of being misdiagnosed. And this is very common, you guys. So I really encourage that you should get a second opinion or even a third opinion and get a full evaluation, making sure that they went through all 4 of those steps to get a full evaluation. But like I mentioned before on the 4th step that most doctors miss is they don't do a full evaluation.
Oh, no.
They don't do a full examination, and they miss a lot of important tests, labs to run, blood work that possibly can rule out or rule in ADHD. And these tests get missed all the time. Okay, and there's something that should definitely be actually run for ADHD and also to have the right type of treatment for ADHD. So you might be wondering, okay, what is those tests? Well, come and join me on this video right here where I talk about the other tests that most doctors miss when it comes to ADHD that are vital to actually rule in and rule out ADHD and also are vital to have the correct type of treatment plan for your ADHD. So I'll see you guys in this video.